Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of What If RuneScape. Today we have a massive topic to talk about, the gods of old school RuneScape. That's right, these things have been around for more than 6,000 years according to the lore, and some even longer. Sure, we are in the 5th age, the age of man, but the influences of some of these gods cannot be ignored. It's very clear that they existed and they're still in many ways influencing real life today. So there should be so many followers of each religion. And especially if we're a medieval fantasy game, whatever the king or queen's religion should be considered the religion of the land. And depending on what god they worship, that would definitely influence the city, society, architecture, the people, all of those kinds of things. And to, in a way, leave the gods in the background kind of feels like a waste. What would it look like if every one of the cities had a specific god influencing its people and architecture? And before we get into it, I want to be sure to make clear, this is not what the lore is, this is simply what it would look like if one god influenced a certain city's growth. I tried to assign as many gods to certain cities as I could, and some cities have already done this for me, so it's really just saying, hey, this city exists. But to be clear, this is not the lore. I've tweaked it just slightly to make these adjustments matter. But I'd say all of my adjustments are incredibly lore friendly. And that's what we're gonna go through today. I'm pretty sure most people only know the big three, Saradomin, Zamorak, and Gothics. But you guys might shit your pants to guess that there's over 15 gods. Some of them are kind of in question depending on their power or their demigod status, but we're gonna include them anyway. So starting off where you start off the game, we've got Fador and Lumbridge. They are worshippers of Saradomin. Picture a bunch of white and blue banners fluttering in the wind with Saradomin's star on every single building. Every suit of armor worn by the guards has that star as well. Talking to random citizens who don't really have a name, like man, you would probably hear things like Saradomin bless you or Saradomin's light guide you. Especially if you went into the church and you saw different statues of Saradomin and it had specific architecture in that way for the blue and white. And you could redesign each and every one of the churches to be geared in that way as well. Really quick, I'm going to put on the screen a bunch of different Saradomin clothing that all of the citizens could wear, or even some of the guards, to really try to bring the world together. And a lot of these things would be super easy to implement because it's really only adding an extra skin to like guard number 16, or it's adding an extra dialogue line or two to man number 4. But really where the biggest change would come from was when you get to redesign the chapel that's essentially in every one of the cities. And speaking of a church that you've likely been to, we're coming to Varrock and the Wilderness, the Church of Zamorak. Varrock and the Wilderness are areas still echoing with the chaos of Zamorak. The wilderness was once a lush forest, but the relentless battles during the God Wars left it a desolate wasteland. And that would give us an awesome ability to have the atmosphere in a darker, more gothic tone with a bunch of reds and blacks draped across buildings. The castle in the wilderness could even be the old Varrock castle that needs to be abandoned because of all the chaos. You'd see the banners and stars embezzled on people's clothes everywhere, and a bunch of different random lines would be included like Zamorak is always watching, or embrace the chaos, brother. Zamorak's teachings instilled into its leaders and citizens, this isn't just a city, it's Zamorak's will. And you know that'd be so much cooler to walk into when you're walking by the Dark Wizards like, what the heck is going on here? How have the guards not got these guys? And of course we gotta head over to Gothics. You might already know that the gnome villages and Taverley, maybe even Ardone, could be aligned with Gothics. The early 4th age saw the construction of the stone circles and other sites dedicated to Gothics as his followers worked to heal and maintain the land. In each and every one of these areas you'd see a bunch of green and brown banners symbolizing Gothics, and there'd be a decent amount of nature elements thrown in, and the gnomes are pulling this off very well. It would be cool though if some of those areas had higher level guards with a more naturistic feel that has the green and brown armor to it. And the catchphrase of some of these citizens could be, "May balance prevail," or "My Gothics rest." And the druids of Taverley, who are a testament to Gothics and its ongoing efforts. And now we're getting into some of the weird gods. You might think the Tazars are just mindless beasts, but they actually follow and worship the god Full, the Tazar born from molten rock, connected to the cycle of creation and destruction. In the fiery depths of the Tazar city, the god Full reigns supreme. The city glows with reds and oranges from molten lava, and the architecture totally reflects that. It's even a gigantic circle if we were going to say it's the circle of life and death. The Tazars have a bunch of fire-themed weapons, and I could already imagine a few different kinds of greetings like "Fool's fire within you." Now we just need to make an altar somewhere so that way I can restore my prayer in the Tazar city. But yet again, probably my favorite god on the list, a weird one, Marimbo from Apol. Apol could be considered a city of celebration and chaos under Marimbo. Apol is relatively untouched by the worst civilization has to offer due to its isolation. Due to the fact that it's really only monkeys, you're probably not going to see a high level of architecture or design. But there's a bunch of different guards in Apol that have really funny outfits. You're telling me that cute little 2-foot tall thing is going to be wearing a ninja's outfit? That's not dangerous, that's cute. The citizens live carefree lives guided by Marimbo's teachings to hopefully enjoy life to the fullest. I could totally see there being random events of groups of monkeys just dancing and celebrating. You could even hear the random monkeys saying things like "Marimbo's joy" or "Mambo with Marimbo." But much like the Tazar city, Apol also does a pretty good job of staying on brand. As well as another one we're going to be talking about, Prifdinnis and Seren. We even get a chance to fight the effigy of Seren. So her influence cannot be questioned, especially not in Prifdinnis. You would totally expect people to say things like "Seren's light guide you," or "Peace be within Seren," or "Peace upon you in Seren's name," as they go about their day, surrounded in the tranquil gardens of Prifdinnis. We could totally play into all of the different tropes for elves, like they're going to be really good at nature, crafting, and other things like that, which would explain why they're so good at making crystal armor. But we're bringing it right back down to Gielinor with Tumakin and Elidinnis, two gods that have gotten some love in the recent years. And it should be a little bit more prevalent in all of the cities across the desert. Each one of the different cities within the desert could be committed to Tumakin or Elidinnis, and you would see that specific theme show through in their clothing and architecture throughout the city. And whenever you go into a specific desert town, you would happen to know which one they worship, because you'd hear things like "Tumakin's light bless you," or "The waters of Elidinnis run smooth." But I think something that would be even cooler is if we introduced a secret desert cult, the cult of Ma. Ma is a god that's responsible for creating Zaros and Seren. And beneath the surface of the desert cities, an undercover cult dedicated to Ma operates in secret. One of the elder gods. Subtle symbols of Ma's influence are hidden in plain sight, often disguised as ancient artifacts or just regular decoration. A cult of Ma had to go away in secret, away from the prying eyes of both Saradominists and Zamorakian followers. The cultists blend in with normal citizens, only revealing themselves with the cryptic type of messages, saying things like "embrace the hidden truth" or "darkness shall reveal all." And you'd be going through these different desert towns and you'd hear that one instead of the normal one that you're used to, and you'd be like, what the f? But either way, Ma's influence is still present and remembered by those within the desert. Heading over to Relica, Nezanat, and Jatizo. I think everybody knows exactly who they worship. They've said it enough. It's V, the god V, a Viking that was granted power by the Stone of Jazzz, a stone created by another god, Jazzz, who we'll get to later. Regardless, V's rise to power as a great Viking warrior cannot be understated, and the Fremeniks worship him to the T. There is no notes on these type of civilizations. They could have maybe a couple of more references to V's strength or honor of the old ways, but they did an absolutely great job with the theme and following suit with who they follow and why. We even have a bunch of different Fremenik armors that you could argue came from the god V, or at the very least, when he was living his time period. Now this next one's going to be a little bit of a curveball because Zaros was defeated by Zamorak. It's one of the things that started the God Wars. But in Yanil, he's still worshipped vehemently. And in Yanil, a city with mysterious and ancient feel, still carries the influence of Zaros, despite his defeat during the Second Age. The city's dark purple and black banners, its secretive nature, and the ruins that dot its landscape are all reminders of Zaros' power once held. Not to mention the Wizard's Tower could likely attribute their power to Zaros as well. But in today's modern age, the followers of Zaros would absolutely have to be working in the shadows to preserve the knowledge of their old god. Phrases kept in secret by certain NPCs could be Zaros guide your path or embrace your destiny. Believe it or not, everybody, we've got our first god on the list that technically isn't even a god. It's 3 demigods in a trench coat, put together in the Karamja jungle, still worships all of them. Shaka, Kazari, and Rahari. No, I'm not going to try to pronounce that again. But again, no notes. Their culture can be seen all throughout Karamja. There could be a few more temples or chapels devoted to them, where there's at least an altar where you could pray. But they have the theme perfectly latched in, with the warriors representing that theme to a T. Throwing in a couple of extra phrases like Shaka guide our paths or Kazari's strength be with you, then we're all set. And we're heading a little bit farther back into the Second Age with the god known as Jazzz, the one who created the Stone of Jazzz that gave the god V his rise to power. And where would the worshippers of Jazzz be located, you ask? Well, it's actually the Dragonkin, so we're looking at Lithcrin and even Fossil Island. With its ancient and mystical atmosphere is where the past would linger. The influence of the elder god Jazzz is evident in the island's stone structures, its ancient golems. You would even be able to see different symbols and runes engraved on them. During the Fourth Age, as the world began to rediscover its history, Fossil Island became a place of study, where scholars and adventurers sought to uncover the secrets of the ancient world and the god who shaped it. You might even hear the scholars just referencing certain sayings that they've read on tablets that they've been recording for the museum, like the power of the ancients, or Jazz's will endure, as they work diligently to uncover and protect the island's secrets, uncovering the mysteries of the Stone of Jazzz. Zaya and Varlamor are already doing very well as well. They have Raulos and Renul, technically not gods according to the old school RuneScape wiki, but treated as such. So we're going to give him the same treatment as well. And Varlamor is the perfect example of how this happens. The sunny gold insignias on the guards, the churches that have a very specific feel to the light of Raulos, and truthfully the inspiration for this video. If you guys haven't checked out Varlamor, just turn on HD if you can and take a walk. But they even have this really cool concept of being a dual follower of both Raulos and Renul. That makes you a Lucanium. And we've been talking about so many different gods, and you guys might be thinking to yourself, where's my favorite ones? Well, we got Armadil and Bandos coming up with Boro and Trollheim. Boro is definitely going to be an Armadil type of encampment, mainly focused on law and order through a righteous fist. And its architecture would be awesome if it could resemble a little bit more of the Aviancy wings and the paladin-like justice feel, but in an exact inverse over at Trollheim, butting right up next to Boro, we've got Bandos's brutal influence. This region is rugged, warlike, bunch of heavy stone fortifications, war drums, and you might even see a couple of carvings of Bandos's image. You would even hear the followers of Bandos, such as like goblins, orcs, and trolls, saying different things like might makes right or celebrate the strong. And the tension between these two regions could be an excellent reason why God War's dungeon is still raging to this day. But believe it or not, everybody, we still have one more god to cover, and that's my personal favorite, Brassica Prime. Zerys is a bizarre and whimsical contrast to the war-torn regions across Gielinor. This otherworldly city is typically under the influence of Gothics, but I think Brassica Prime, the god of cabbages, fits so much better, unless we want to make leprechauns a little bit more prevalent to the lore. But the city of Zerys reflects his eccentric nature in like every corner. Banners could be green, cabbage themed and a little bit surreal architecture like we already have it in Zerys. The guards in Zerys might even don some cabbage armor or the cabbage shield, but most importantly, it'd be amazing if they could disguise themselves as cabbages, adding to like a different surreal feeling. We even have Brassica Prime mages that might be kind of funny to actually find somewhere in the game to talk to. No, I didn't exactly get a chance to fit every single city in the game on this list. The lawless pirates of Mostly Harmless might not be worshippers of anything, and likewise, the area of Mortania could be left to wallow because you can't really compete for the soul of somebody who's already dead. But if you do think any of these other areas would be under the jurisdiction of some of the gods that I've mentioned, please leave it down below. And yes, a lot of these can just be chalked up to cosmetic changes, but really that's what brings everything together. The theme and feel while you're playing. And I know a lot of people don't really care about the lore or quests or anything like that, but if you make it easy enough to understand just by a simple look at the architecture, citizens, or what they're saying, then you wouldn't even have to take the time to do a deep dive like I did. But hey, what do you guys think? Would the game be improved by putting a little bit more fashionscape on the cities and people of old school RuneScape? Let me know down below, and if you got any suggestions for the next What If RuneScape video, please leave it down there too. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all later.